So, before starting today, I want to talk about Insta-GTO because we are talking a bit about that yesterday, and talk a bit about my thoughts on that. So, firstly, I was using, stuff like Insta-GTO, like skiers, like a ton in 2018 to study because I didn't, I wanted to learn like just the pure GTO solution more. And it wasn't like too bad because you could go through spots pretty fast and like learn GTO solutions quickly. But after a while, it kind of started to get uh, more and more useless. And like it's like, how would learning the GTO solution help me in the spot? Because I'm not going to want to play the GTO solution everywhere, and like nobody's playing GTO anyways, even at the highest levels. Um, So obviously, if you don't know how to use Instant GTO well, then or like if you don't know how to use GTO in general, then yeah, Instant GTO can help just like any other GTO tool. Um, but the important thing is always going to be like how you're going to use that information, like how you're going to be able to adjust against someone who is deviating, or like how to create your own strategies, how to adjust against the population. And instant GTO won't actually help you to do that unless you just kind of use your brain to do it. Like you're not going to be able to see what the solver output ends up doing against the population. I mean, um, if you adjust by node locking and stuff. So we could kind of say that like instant GTO is kind of similar to like doing hand reviews. It's kind of like a good tool to use more on your own time. If you're like studying on your own to learn GTO solutions quickly and go over spots, it can be used like pretty good as like, let's say, a warm-up tool before you want to start a session or something. I don't know, or just. But a lot of times, yeah, like it's just going over stuff you already know or you've seen already. But that's kind of like a drill, and there's different types of ways to learn. And um, the thing is, it's not as you're not always going to learn something new with instant GTO. Whereas with PO, because of all the different factors, you're going to have to learn something new. And it means that, like with PO or with simple post flop, with like real solvers, you're going to have to go like dive deep into that topic. And that's called deep learning. That's how you really learn with solvers. So, like, these are way better to learn new GTO concepts that you haven't gone through before. So, using GTO, Instant GTO is like really simple, also. Like, a lot of people they like to use Instant GTO regularly because it's just really simple and it's really easy. You can just like click like a board and click the solution, and you're like, all right, cool, I found it, and now I can't change it, but I did my job, so that's great. But it doesn't allow for much critical thinking, so it kind of encourages you to be lazy. Like Instant GTO is like a very lazy version of POSolve or a very lazy version of simple post flop. People who use instant GTO too much, they kind of like to pretend they're studying. It's kind of like it gives them this dopamine hit, like, oh yeah, I'm studying, I'm being so smart right now because I'm like learning this stuff. When in reality, you're kind of just going through the motions. You're kind of um, just satisfying your like need to study for a day or something. So when going through a solver, you can always learn a new concept and learn a new strategy and stuff like that. In instant GTO, you're not able to node lock, you're not able to change the bet sizings, you're not able to change the raise sizings, and the other parameters. You can't change pre-flop. So um, it can be much harder to go deep, basically. So instant GTO allows you to autopilot, uh, but deep learning is much less effective with instant GTO. And when we're having our meetings, I kind of want to have deep learning going on and not just like, you know, drills and repetition, stuff like that. So basically, I'd encourage you to use it on your own a bunch if you want, but uh, not too much in the group meetings. All right, so let's get started with King, Queen, Jack. This will be a pretty interesting flop. Um, all right, so firstly, I didn't even go to the GTO solution here, but I mean, if you want to look at it, you can look at it. But the reason I didn't even go there is because it ended up pretty much being like, you know, it would split sizings between every possible size imaginable. It would use like pot, it would use 75, it would use 50, it would use 25 at all different frequencies, and like it was like the most difficult. It's one of the hardest flops to copy GTO basically in all of No Limit Hold'em. So I just decided to pick one sizing again. I think this is the most effective sizing, as we basically want to kind of we both hit the we both hit the flop pretty hard, so I think just betting big when we've got a good hand and then using some key bluffs would be good. So I wouldn't be going too bluff happy. I would usually just be going big with my strongest kings. Two pairs are kind of mixed, so king, jack, kings, queens, and jacks are all very mixed. You can be checking more often. It's actually probably going to be a good idea to be checking a lot with two pair plus, and then we can bet big with ace, low, weak ace x, especially if it's got a spade in it, as those can be used to barrel. And as for like weak hands, I probably wouldn't be barreling, like betting too much with these. But I mean, as we see, GTO is actually betting quite a lot with like total air. It's betting like even without backdoor flush draws relatively often. It's going to turn pocket fours into a bluff and like triple barrel with this, for example. 6-5 off. Like it's going to have all of these random bluffs. It's also going to bluff a ton with gut shots, as we see, like 70% of the time in general or something. Like 10x is bluffing almost always, like, 80%, and 9x like 60% or something. So as we see, it's going to have a lot of bluffs over here. Yeah. So I just simplified it to this. And so my question to you guys is, how much should the big blind fold against a 90 into 120 bet here? So 75% bet. What would be the worst hand you think big blind should be calling, let's say? Bottom of calling range. Oh God, I can't hear you. What do you say? Like there's some, I don't know.
I don't know. I also heard that.
There was some
But
like fuzzy noise.
yeah. I think a lot of 9x's he will fold, and I think like all 9x's without additional equity. Same with ace x's, probably ace x's without backdoor he will fold, and some weakest jack x's he will fold. That's my guess.
Okay. Was kid? Okay, Nico, that microphone is not working. I'm
He's
sorry.
trying.
Yeah, maybe you need to get a new microphone. Okay, cool. Wiz, what do you think?
I would be calling all ace X's and jack X's.
Oh God, you fucking station. Okay. Anyways, yeah, it's folding like over half the. It's folding every queen.
Wow.
All right, it's folding every queen without a spade, basically, without backdoor spades, or like without backdoor clubs. So you should be doing extremely you should be extremely nitty, basically, from the big blind. Even even with this GTO player bluffing quite a bit, right? GTO is bluffing a decent amount, and even with all of these bluffs, you should be folding like a ton over here. You should be folding basically all your Queen X and Jack X without backdoors, and Ace X without backdoors again. And you should fold every single nine, basically. Like you're only calling like flush draws, basically. Like the gut shot is pretty much irrelevant. Like the nine just doesn't matter at all. But the ace is a lot stronger than the nine, obviously. People won't be barreling much on the ace, and also it's gonna, like, let's say, counterfeit a lot of the nines, which are c betting on the flop, because as we see, a lot of the flop bluffs will have a nine, so the ace is actually pretty good to counterfeit it.
Okay, okay.
No, those are that's out of position betting range.
I was just curious what blocking axis is better.
Okay. Yeah, it's checking a decent amount of weak kings, especially like worse than king nine. It's gonna check, let's say, 66% of them in general, like king eight and worse. Um, Regarding raising, big blind can raise some two pairs, but in general, it's just gonna like call them, because small blind is so polarized, so it doesn't make much sense to be raising, to be honest, for protection. But king nine is the hand that requires the most protection. Like king 10 doesn't require as much protection, because an ace and nine give him a straight, whereas king nine, there's only one out, and like if even if a 10 comes, like GTOs gonna end up calling down with two pairs most of the cases, at least against triple barrels. So that's why it's a better idea to raise king nine than king 10, since king nine is, we could say, the strongest non-paired king. Since king 10 is like almost as strong as king jack over here, it looks like. Also, the best hands to bluff are going to be 10x with a spade, or two spades, because it's a flush draw. It's a very strong hand, and it's got like a huge amount of equity, and you might be able to fold out some of the weaker hands. And even if you get called, it's not like the end of the world. Unlike if you jam with like a random flush draw, these are in really big trouble if you do get called, compared to like a 10x of spades. So, all right, that's how to play. What are we doing against a? I mean, that's how GTO would play. So what I did here was I made this guy a calling station. So yeah, as we see here, I also made him raise more, basically, with king queen, king jack, queen jack, right? It's like I made him raise basically about half the time with king 9 plus, pretty much. So he's raising more with kings in general. He's raising with king 10 more. He's still going to call like king 8 and worse. But I also made him call every single queen, just like you guys would, because that's my population assumption. So that's why this software is so good, because you can like assume what the population is going to do. And so I guess my assumption was pretty good. And then and that's why it's so useless also, by the way, like these HUD stats. Like, look at the difference, 53% call to 50% call, and stuff like that. Like, how will that 3% HUD statistic help me in this situation? It's not gonna help me. That's why, like, yeah, I'm just not using HUDs nearly as much, whereas just my knowledge of the game and how it's meant to be played, and different types of boards, and how different boards interact, and how different people play on them, basically. So on this particular board, like, the HUD seems kind of useless, basically. And then, yeah, I just made them raise more with these, and then I made them call every queen. And as for jacks, I left it the same as before. So there's no differences except I made them call every queen, and I made them raise a few more two pairs and stuff like that, which I think is a very realistic assumption. And so I wanted to ask, how would GTO play against that? And this is how. So if we compare, it's going to be checking a bit more, but still not much. But we can try to analyze this a bit, I guess. But basically, we should pretty much completely stop any kind of random bluffs. Like, as we saw here, it was bluffing a lot with backdoor. Like, it was bluffing a ton with hands like 4-2 suited, especially with backdoor clubs, like 5-4. Like, all of these, like, weak hands with backdoor clubs, it was bluffing a ton. Whereas over here, it pretty much completely stops bluffing all these backdoors. Same with, like, 6-5. Pocket fours are still one of the better hands to be bluffing compared to everything else, just because pocket fours can actually it's more likely to. I mean, it's a small thing, but it's more likely to hit a set than these to hit a two pair or something. It's like a tiny thing, but yeah, it's one of the better hands to be bluffing. And you're bluffing like flush draws, as we see, much less again. Now, even the 10x's and 9x's are still some of the best to be bluffing, as we see. So it's still going to be bluffing those, although it's going to be at a smaller frequency in general. So if you're going to be bluffing, I guess the 10x's and 9x's are going to be the best, and also maybe like ace 4, ace 3, ace 2, because those have a bit more equity, and you're going to be able to fold out some worse hands. I think I'm not totally sure, but one important thing is going to be barreling a lot more against the mega calling station as well. And as for the value hands, we can also say that you should be betting like this a lot more with value hands. Well, maybe not necessarily two pairs or sets, but definitely with the vulnerable ones, such as, King X, like weaker King X, like you see King 7, King 6 are betting over half the time here, whereas here it's only betting like 40% of the time. And here it's betting like 25% of the time with like King 4 suited. It's still 25% of the time. So, I mean, well, King 5 suited has 32%, King 5 suited has 26. So it's like small differences with the weaker ones, but you can kind of see how GTO is skewing more towards value, especially since it got rid of a ton of like random bluffs. Yeah, so this is how a decent adjustment to a calling station, although, this is the minimalist exploitative adjustment. The maximal exploitative adjustment would be to even stop bluffing with a lot of 9s and stop bluffing with a lot of 10s and all that stuff, right? Which would probably be decent in reality. And I don't know, maybe we could look at just what happens on a few turns to see if I was right about my theory about barreling more. And yeah, exactly. Another important thing is that when you do bet, because you're so much more value heavy over here, you're going to be barreling like a ton more. Like you're over here in the pure GTO theory on a blank, you're going to be checking like half the time. Over here, you're checking like pretty much never. You're just going to barrel everything. Okay. I mean, it makes sense if you think about it, right? Okay, should we move on to the
Is it a
next?
standard to use half pot sizing here?
You could use everything you want, like those every sizing. I chose 3/4 because I think I'd like to check a lot, especially against the population. Okay.
I meant on the turn because you chose half pot on the turn.
Oh, right. On the turn, there's half pot and all in, and it looks like half pot is more standard. Yeah. Why? What other sizings would you choose? Maybe it's possible that like 25% could be good. Definitely. But I think half pot is a pretty good sizing here on the turn.
What's the SPR on the river when you bet half pot here?
It's gonna be very small, you're right.
150 into 600 pot.
200. 200 into 600. But it's still going to be like enough to fold out like some, probably, well, a lot of misdraws, for example. Even some Jack X are folding somehow. I mean, not very much, but like a lot of Ace X maybe. So it's not like the worst.
Wait. Can we firstly analyze the turn before the river? Because I want to check out how they react versus our barrel on the turn. Yeah, because we jumped to the river and we didn't speak anything about turn, and I want to see how they should react to our barrel.
Yeah, so okay, let's analyze. Let me know if there's anything in particular you want to look at. I didn't really prepare for this.
Yeah, they raising a lot, so that's something uncommon, I think.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, they're not raising much. And that's another reason why barreling half pot is really good, because like in reality people won't be raising nearly as much.
What do you think about the king queen axis?
Mm, considering that we are so polarized, and especially we're so value heavy, I think like folding a queen on the turn is pretty good. Yeah, but again, I don't think people are doing this in reality. So probably bluff even less, but you shouldn't be bluffing. But like because of our flop range here, we're not going to have much bluffs. Well, not as much as here. So that's a good thing to notice, that like people are probably again too much calling stations with queen. Like they should have folded on the flop. Like, God, it's so bad to call queens again. But I mean, yeah, this is a pretty funny spot where the population is just calling their queens when it's so bad.
But wait. Do you think they are calling on the turn?
Um, some people, yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to judge. Like, hard to say for me.
Yeah, but they should be even folding on the flop, basically.
Yeah. Because I thought there would be like massive fold equity on the turn, and it doesn't appear to be.
GTO is always gonna make sure not to like overfold, like you know. So against a real human, there might be more fold equity. The thing is, because we made this guy call more on the flop, he's automatically gonna end up folding a bit more. But in this situation, it's not even that much more, because but it's like he's gonna end up calling more to compensate for all those hands. Like I mean, he's gonna end up calling more queens to compensate for all the extra hands that he was calling on the flop. So, for example, he should have been folding. I should have made him call some nines, for example. Like I didn't even include nines in the in this one. But yeah, I just made him call more queens actually. Now that I remember, so yeah, it's not gonna make the hugest difference. But as we see, he is gonna have to call more queens because of all of that.
Sure. Okay, so let's go to the river.
Uh,
I don't know if there is something that is really important on the turn to notice.
yeah, I don't think the river's particularly interesting here, and neither the turn, to be honest. This is more about like a flop that a lot of people just get wrong. Yeah, nothing too interesting here.
I'm wondering if we skip a c-bet with a 8-5 suited or something like that. What's the sizing on the turn?
You mean if it goes check check?
Yes, and you have an opportunity to delay.
Fuck, I didn't look at that either. That would be interesting. Maybe, I don't know, maybe like you could do that later because I didn't look at it. But yeah, it's not what I wanted to look at. I just put half pot as a standard. But I don't think half pot is terrible. Anyways, yeah, maybe you could look at it yourself later. Sorry.
Sure.
Okay. So what? Now the next thing that I wanted to look at was what happens when we check to villain. So I think we can close this because that's all I wanted to analyze. So basically over here, here we have GTO and how he's supposed to be bluffing if we do end up checking to him. And we're going to end up checking relatively frequently. The best sizing to use is 60. I did check this in advance, and it's the most standard sizing to use in position as a float bet in this situation, which does make some sense. He's betting a strong range, which is kind of neither polarized nor merged. Like, he's still betting a few combos of queens, for example, so it's not like super polarized, and he does have a lot of equity bluffs as well, like 10x, for example, and 9x again. And once again, he's gonna be bluffing bunch of like these random like 3-2 suited, like 5-4 off, 5-3 off, 6-5 off, like 5-4 suited, these type of hands, which a lot of people aren't doing. And again, like weak ace x. So again, I don't think many people are bluffing these types of hands. So like, and they need to be bluffing these, like even without backdoors, like a lot. And I just don't think very many people are doing that. He also needs to be bluffing like, 50% of his 10s and 9s, roughly. Like the weaker the 10 or 9, the better it is to bluff. Although, yeah, overall it looks like 50% of 10s and 9s.
What's the plan of the future streets with these 5-4 suited and 9x's?
I mean, I guess it's just gonna barrel off, but I'm gonna look at that later. Right now, I wanna ask you guys something. And also, he needs to check back a decent portion of kings. Like, he needs to check back. Like, a lot of people are not checking king x back on this flop. Like, compared to other flops, like that, ace queen 9, someone told me that they might be checking a lot of ace back. I'm not sure if I agree with that or not, but over here, I'm pretty sure that people are not checking back kings, at least. And so let's try to see what happens when we play against somebody who's more like value heavy and less bluff happy. So what I did was I made him bet about the same frequencies with 2-pair, but he's going to be betting much more with kings. I still made him have some checks with the weaker kings. 75% checks with the weaker kings. I could have made it a bit more. It wouldn't have made too much of a difference. But otherwise, king 7 plus, he's always betting. And he's also bluffing much less with everything else. So I basically added kings to his bluffing to his betting range. But then I removed bluffs. I didn't remove them. I reduced them by a certain percentage. It looks like I reduced them by like, yeah, I think I reduced them by, we could actually just check.
By half. I don't know.
It looks like it's half, but I'm not sure. This is it, right? Yeah, it was by half. Okay, so I cut the bluffs by half, which is something, but it's not like huge. Oh, Oh no, what I did is I totally got rid of total air bluffs. That's what I did. So I got rid of all the backdoors. So I got rid of like they're only gonna bluff with their flush draw or backdoor clubs. Like the percentage won't change. No, it will change a bit, but not much. And I just removed all the hearts from the bluffs basically. And I kept the nines. I did make the nines bluff less a bit, and the tens bluff less. All right, so you kind of get the point. People are. I think this is more realistic. So, okay, same question to you guys. Bottom of your calling range now against the float bet. Half pot only. What's the bottom of your calling range?
Mm. King access. Okay.
Just
What
name a
was
hand. Just name a hand. Like the one weakest hand.
Queen 9.
Queen nine. Okay, with
Jack 9.
Jack
Versus
nine.
half pot, I'm not folding Jack X again.
God, WizKid, you're so exploitable. All right. So it's very different again.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
Queen 9 is correct, yeah. Queen 9, Jack 9. And even Queen 9 and Jack 9 are extremely close. Like, it's very close, Queen 9 and Jack 9. Against a lot of people, like, I'd be folding Queen 9, to be honest, against the population. Because I think I put too many bluffs, even. Yeah, and this is like a like really big spot that people misplay in. And like anything worse than Queen 9 is really easy fold actually against the population. Over here, according to GTO, obviously like it's gonna be calling every queen, and jacks are very close. But over here against the population, it's gonna be just check folding a ton. And because the interesting thing is also because the villain is so much more like equity heavy, even it's basically not got a calling range. It's just got a fucking check raising range, which is ridiculous. But it's like the reason for this, it's like check raising queen 9, right? Which is it seems kind of retarded at first. But when you think about it, over here, this person's range is bluffing. So it's bluffing equity hand. It's bluffing 9x, 10x. It's not bluffing random crap. It's only bluffing like flush draws and backdoors. So we want to like just deny that equity with like queen 10 or whatever, jack 10. And it's better to be denying equity. And if we run into a king, well, too bad, because we're going to end up calling down anyways, I guess. And so if we run into a king, it's kind of like, all right, you got a king, but at least I have some equity against the king. And like the queen 9, queen 10 type of hands turn into this type of weird semi bluff. Obviously, the queen 9 needs to have a spade in it. Yeah, and then again, and it also great because it puts like tens and nines in a very tough spot. So it's gonna force a lot of these nines or like tens that have very good equity into a very tough spot, and you're gonna make them fold quite a lot, which is really good. Same even for ace-x. So yeah, it's like good option to go for the check raise. Just no point check raising the weaker draws because you're not expecting many folds actually. Yeah, but like if you can get them to call with like a 10, then that's also amazing because like maybe you check raise with an ace-x of spades and then they call and they have a worse spade. So that's like a dream scenario for you, kind of.
Are you
Although
folding 10x in the solution? Like after raise,
They're
Yeah,
folding, yeah. I mean, especially this is a small sizing. Like, you'd probably go bigger in reality. But yeah, I'd say that they should be folding. And if they don't, then that's even better. But yeah, I think I wanted to show you guys this because I knew somebody would be calling fucking queens here, like against half pot. Okay, and it's just terrible against the population. Yeah, I mean this is why
I'm a GTO bot.
using instant GTO skiers is so useless if you don't know how to adjust properly.
you are losing bot with it.
For sure not against you.
It's like impossible to. Oh, like Nice to Meet was telling me one day he was playing against GTO bot for like I don't know 30 hours straight or something ridiculous, and he has like hundreds of thousands of hands against a GTO bot, which is ridiculous, I think, and he's losing by like 8 BB per 100
Ooh,
in the long term. So like,
a lot.
yeah, nobody can beat GTO bots, but it's still pretty cool. Um, all right, so that's what I wanted to look at.
You can go to play on Poker Master and you're gonna face GTO bots all day, all night.
Great.
And the funny thing is that Mermanky was cheating them because he thought that they were weak because they were calling stations. So.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I saw him play against them sometimes. Oh God. Look at. All right, so that's that. I think you wanted to see a turn for something. What did you want to see the
Yeah.
turn for?
For opportunity to barrel after probing on the flop when you are in position. So you bet 60 on the flop and then what on the turn?
Oh, right. Okay. So basically, um, I think if you're going to be bluffing, then I mean, especially against the population who's not like who's going to be calling way too much in general. They're going to be calling like they should be folding every single offsuit aces. Um, they're going to be calling most of their queens, and I think maybe jacks will be fine for them. But like, since they're calling way wider with weak hands, if you do probe, I mean, if you do float bet, then you should just triple barrel, like 100% of the time, pretty much. I just don't really think that they're gonna be. I mean, I just don't think it's a very good idea to set up a bluff into a flop calling station. But I mean, if you want to triple barrel, then I mean, you can do that. Okay. Um, I don't know. I guess it depends on the turn as well. Oh, on 10 it's check check. Okay. Or maybe not a spade. Okay. 10 is just check check everywhere. So 10's not a good card to triple barrel, but it looks like pretty much everything. Mm, let's say 9, 8 and lower is good to just triple barrel pretty much your entire range. I mean, as we see here, it's gonna check back more with kings than bluffs. Like if you have 6-3 or whatever, 5-2, it's just gonna triple barrel pretty much always. Oh yeah, that's also interesting. The sizing it chooses is the smallest one. Protection. Also, it's because of the flush draw, right? Yeah, that's here. It's going half pot. Flush draw is like flush draw is invulnerable. Like it doesn't need protection from another flush draw if you've got a flush. So you
But
can.
it's 8. It's 8. Can you check it in? Ah no, it may be 7. So. Okay. Yeah, you're right.
Mm, it's even turning an 8 into a bluff. Okay. That's funny. But yeah, okay, you can.
I would like to check one thing
Uh
quickly.
huh.
Because if they are betting so value heavy, what solver suggests to do on the turn after check?
Uh,
Oh, so betting so like, not that much.
I mean, it's still like more than this. It's still a lot more than this.
Mm.
Yeah, if we can't really analyze the sizing, but we could analyze the types of hands and mm, yeah, you can definitely like bluff at any frequency with random hands, like a lot more. I'd
More
say
value betting with queen X's.
right. Yeah, that's also important to note. Like value betting with queens becomes this thing for sure. Yeah, pretty good
And
observation.
what he's calling?
I
Okay.
mean, I'm not sure if this is as important.
Okay. Okay.
Like I'm trying to
Nothing.
think. Like
Nothing interesting.
okay, so that's what I had for this flop. I have one more flop prepared for you. Would you like to see that?
Yay!
All right. I got yeah, it should be interesting. It's another interesting one. I think I'll open all three first. So 10-9-5. I'd rather put G2 on the right and then the other two on the left. So we got a calling station again somewhere, and we have. Wait. Is this King Queen Jack? Fuck. Block bet and large bet. Okay. I don't think the actual like strategy is too important. I mean, it's kind of important actually. So this is block bet, right? This is large bet. This is GTO. Okay. Okay. So, let's look at GTO first. I included only two sizings. Yeah, if you want to be a perfectionist, you could like go ahead and include like 100% and 50%. It's not going to make a big difference. Like they're going to use all different types of sizings on this flop, just like the previous one. Very hard to remember. And so this is what it would look like if we used only two sizings, a small one and a large one, which makes a lot of sense to me. So if you can like follow this type of strategy and bet small with most of your range, but like bet big with certain strong hands, mostly like 10x's, pocket jacks, pocket queens, those would work really well. Mm, let's see. But what's interesting is that I think this would actually work better against fish in general, and not really this, but I mean, using two sizings would work well against fish. But against regs, I do think, like, I don't really want to be put into these situations. And I don't think regs are making too many mistakes if you use a two sizing strategy against regs, because as we see, I think they'll be raising enough with these type of hands. I also think that they're going to be floating enough with like air hands and king x. So I don't think they'll make many mistakes against the small sizing in general. So if we go to the large bet only, the strategy changes completely. And here we're checking 65% of the time, which is a huge difference, obviously. And we go with a much more polarized betting range. I think this is a much better strategy to use in general against regs. Against fish, I don't mind just betting big with strong hands or like strong equity hands, and then betting small when you have a bluff, or like betting half pot even with like random stuff. But like against regs, I'd pick a strategy and learn it deeply. So the one I would pick would be the large sizing. It's pretty intuitive, and like again, like previously, people are gonna be making some kind of mistakes, but let's analyze this first. So we should be betting our tens. Tens are the best hands to be checking. I mean betting. And one very important thing when going with a large sizing, like notice over here, if you use a large sizing only strategy, it's going to be very important to be checking all your 2-pair plus. So you're checking all your 10-9, your 10s, your 9s, your 5s. The reason for this is because 10x really wants to be betting. Same with, like, let's say pocket jacks, pocket queens, even kings and aces. They prefer to be betting in general. So that's why it's very important to be checking with your 2-pair plus. The best 10x hand to be checking, surprisingly, is ace 10. Why do you think this is? Why do you think ace 10 is better to check than, for example, jack 10, or like, I don't know, even a weak 10, like 10-4? Hello?
I guess is that with ace we are not blocking the range, which will bet after our check. Like,
But God, you're fucking good, yeah.
yeah.
God, man, you're so much, yeah, you're so good, dude. Like, that's like one of the main reasons for sure. In position is going to have a lot of ace-x in the check-back range. Like, they're still going to have some aces, right, in their pre-flop range, but they're never going to like really float bet an ace. And so it makes sense to be checking these and allow them to be bluffing more. And then obviously ace 10 is going to be a hand that we go for a check raise for value with. If I change the raise sizings to more than 2.5x, it might even be checking even more.
How about two pairs and those not like sets? It is checking to check raise or checking to check call?
So if I'm correct, but yeah, as we see, it's not going to be float betting much with ace-x. And again, the best sizing in position is half pot here. I checked that before as well. In general, on red flops, big blind versus small blind, 60 or like half pot will be good. But anyways, 2 pairs will be very mixed, basically. That's kind of always the case. So basically with 2 pairs, I'd take a very exploitative approach, 2-pair plus. I wouldn't try to like raise 10-9 and not like it's not gonna make a difference, you know. I mean, 10s and 9s prefer to check call. Pocket 5s and 10-9 are basically indifferent, and so it's gonna check raise a bit with 10-9, but I don't think it will really make a huge difference. But yeah, if you think people are too value heavy, I'd check raise more often. If you don't, then I'd check call. And yeah, I'd take a pretty exploitative approach with these, pretty much. Although it is always good to check call with like some very strong hands, such as pocket 10s and pocket 9s, because these are less vulnerable. These are like super strong hands that you're going to be able to maybe check raise on the turn and protect that that line where you check call and then check raise, or like you can go for value on the river, stuff like that. If you check call and then check the turn, and then you can like value bet the river or something. So that also makes sense. Yeah. All right, let's get back to the flop. Very interesting flop. All right, let's take a look at 8-7. Why do you think it's never bluffing?
Because we don't want to get raised and be in the tough spot.
I mean, yeah, that's one of the reasons. But why is it bluffing like other draws? Like, I don't know, 8-6, or with a spade, or like Queen, Jack, and Queen. Why is it? Why 8-7 particularly? Or like, yeah, what's so special about this? Okay. So the reason why 8-7 is really good. Well, firstly, do you think it's gonna check call, check fold, check raise?
Check call.
Yeah, it's gonna be check calling, like pretty much 100% of the time. Yeah, exactly. And why is 8-7 so good to check call? It's because, as we saw, we have like a few hands that we're going to be check calling for value. We're going to be check calling a lot of nines. Firstly, we're going to be check calling a lot of two pairs plus, and we're going to check call maybe some of the weak tens sometimes. And so if we're check calling all those hands, and we're check calling like, I don't know, probably Queen Jack as well, right? We're check calling these when we don't bluff them. So like when we do check call with a hand like 8-7, it's like it's going to be very hard to have pure bluffs in a check call and then the turn goes check line. If we don't have any like bluffs in that line, then villain can fold a shit ton of his range. But I don't know. I'm just gonna keep using blanks. But over here, if villain like decides to check back, and I don't know, like queen comes, then we can be bluffing a ton. Maybe not a queen, maybe like a 3. Like basically we want to be bluffing a ton, but like 8-7 is one of the only hands that is actually going to be like a bluff. I mean, everything else is just like a missed flush draw, but it's really good to have some hands that are going to be like, pure bluffs basically. So like 8-7 is a really good hand to be check calling the flop with, and then just bluffing on the river if they don't barrel on the turn, which is going to happen pretty often. Alright, so about ace-3 off and ace-2 off, ace-4 off, even these, like ace-4 with backdoor clubs and stuff. So these weak ace-x are always really good hands to be bluffing with. They're some of the best. Firstly, it's got a bit of equity with the backdoor flush draw. It's got a bit of equity with the ace, and a lot of weaker hands are just going to be bluffing, and you can't really check call on the flop with these. I mean, I don't know, maybe you could, like, maybe with the ace of spades, but not the 4 of spades, for example. So it's going to be very close between a check call or check fold with these, and you don't really want to be put in that situation. So whereas like check calling ace-6 suited with the backdoor flush draw is way easier, right? It's just way more obvious than ace-3 suited, as we see. So yeah. Also, same with like ace queen, ace jack, those are much stronger. And so we don't want to be really check calling with them, but they work very well as bluffs, since we can just fold out stronger a6 as well, and it can barrel. Also, this is a hand that you can barrel, let's say, half pot very often. So you can, like, let's say you can bet, and then you can barrel half pot very often. Especially if a spade comes, let's say over here, it's going to barrel a ton with a spade. Let's say you bet half pot. And then on the river, I don't know, like a king comes maybe, and you can just like, okay, you can't see. Okay, maybe not a king, but like, I don't know, some random like 6. Yeah. So on a 6, we can actually end up check calling. So like, because basically the value of an ace is like almost the same as the value of a 10 by this point. So these weak ace X's can be interesting to turn into a bluff and then barrel the turn and then even just check call a bunch of like random rivers, like blank rivers, or like if the board pairs or something, then it can be very good for that.
Yeah, just to make our strategy simple.
Oh God, okay, that's something I learned from Nice to Meet. All right, big blind should not be raising very much against any sizing, but against this sizing, like if you were using pure GTO strategy where it's mixing strategies, but that's not really how many people play. But let's say if we did use this, then yeah, having a raising strategy is okay because all of the strong hands are in the big betting range, or like a lot more strong hands are there, so it's very mixing the strategies. Over here, obviously, we're polarized, so it makes no sense. Against a small size only strategy, there's again almost no raises, basically. So raising in position against a small size, unless he's using a mixed strategy, doesn't make any sense. The reason for that is because yeah, in position and out of position are totally different. Like if you're out of position, you're interested in lowering the in position's advantage by check raising, so your medium hands become stronger than uh, when they raise, basically. However, being in position, like you want to basically use your in position advantage, and so you're very happy to take a free card and just see a free turn or like a cheap turn against a small bet, even with some like vulnerable type of hands, as we can see. Now, if you're playing against somebody who's raising this amount or like even more against a small sizing here. Maybe somebody is just raising every single like strong 10 just because like they think this is a very wet board, it's very vulnerable. In that situation, that would be a good case to be betting small with even more hands that GTO is even not doing it very much with. Like GTO is basically betting like large always with jacks and queens and kings, king 10, stuff like that. If you're not going to be doing that, like if someone's going to be raising so damn much, then it's actually a great idea to use a small sizing with more value. But yeah, so there's some type of people who do raise a lot. So against them, it makes sense to use a small sizing more. Okay, so let's talk a bit about an interesting hand for big blind now. So, all right, here we're, okay, not that one because it's not raising. Let's talk about here. So why is big blind raising king queen as a bluff here? Why is king queen like such a damn good bluff? Someone know? Like king queen is like the best bluff for big blinds. Like most people just call, right? Because like, 2 over cards and showdown value, you can realize your equity in position. Why is this such a good bluff? Anyone know? Okay, I'm not going to say anything until someone takes a guess.
I would say we have tons of equity, and we are beating the opponent's draws sometimes with our king high.
Mm-hmm.
And mm,
Wizkid?
that's my guess. Now you have to say.
Wizkid, what's your guess?
I don't know.
Okay. So the reason why King Queen is like the best hand to be bluffing with, basically, in this situation, is yeah, as you said, you've got a decent amount of equity. And also, when you're raising, you're forcing a lot of villains' weaker draws to call. So, for example, let's say he's betting big and you just jam, right? He still needs to call a hand like Queen Jack or King Jack or Ace. Well, Ace Jack is kind of close, but like Ace Jack actually beats you. But he doesn't have like as many weak draws that need to call. Um,
Wait. But we are raising all in?
I mean, with this hand, yeah, quite a lot against against a large sizing, yes.
Okay.
The standard raise sizing, if they go large, is you're just gonna jam yourself, as we see, because you're basically jamming your tens for protection, right? And then you're jamming like strong draws that dominate villain's weaker draws. So over here, villain should be, he should be bluffing sometimes with like some flush draws, especially like 7-6 and 8-6 of spades are very strong draws actually. But if it gets in the money on the flop against King Queen, it's in terrible shape. Same if it gets the money in against like King 7. Like King 7, King 8 suited, these are also jams by GTO, whereas like the weaker ones are just calling. So like King X and King Queen is dominating all the straight draws, basically, that has to call. Like, he needs to call hands like, you know, some weaker nines or like some Queen Jack especially is a hand that's getting dominated, and any flush draw that decided to bluff that way is yeah, okay, there's not much, but like any flush draw that's gonna be that decided to bluff is basically gonna have to call. So that's why it's such a good option to be raising and using your King Queen as a bluff. And also hands like a King X of spades are also very good to use as bluffs, basically. Compared, like you shouldn't be bluffing like 7-3 of spades. That's kind of spazzy. But bluffing like King 7 of spades is super good. And then the reason why Ace 7 of spades can, or like Ace X of spades, I mean, can call is just because it's the strongest spade in the deck. So this can actually call on the flop, and then it can call again on any turn pretty much if they jam or barrel, whatever. So ace-x of spades are good to just call because it's so damn strong. Same with like 8-7 of spades in general, for example. Okay.
Can you check the EV difference between raising and calling?
It probably won't be big, but yeah, it's pretty much indifferent. But I mean, there's not many hands that are actually better as a raise. Like so, yeah. But it's still better, like a bit better.
Okay.
But yeah, I love this bluff here. It's amazing. Same principle if you go up against someone who uses a small sizing. But again, if you against somebody who uses a small sizing only, I wouldn't raise, right? As we see here. Like I would have a very small raising frequency. A lot of
Piosol versus is a smart shit.
it is, right? And if you like know how to use it and like understand the concepts behind it, then like you can bring that to the table and like it helps you. It's so interesting, yeah. All right. I wonder what else I want to go over. Oh yeah, okay. So one more thing, I think, and then we can Oh no, we can do a few other things actually. So over here, let's go just stick to the large sizing now. So let's assume that guys large sizing only. So we call and we're calling this range, whatever. Okay, when we're calling all of our 9s, we're calling all our 10s, we're calling almost all of our 5s. Although against the population, if you think they're under bluffing, it's definitely okay to fold some 5s, I think. Yeah, 5s are very close, so you can fold some 5s. All right, so anyways, nothing else is too special. We're like calling all our strong draws. Okay. Now then. Oops, I meant to call. All right, so let's say like a blank comes and he decides to check on this turn. Like, what do you think should be our float bet on the turn if he checks? Like, what's your range gonna be? Or like, what percentage will you bet after he checks?
Not a big one.
What? Okay, like, give me a number.
20%.
Okay, yeah, quite nitty. WizKid?
50.
Oh my god, you guys. Come on! I mean, 50 is not too bad, but it's still like 75, right? So, and also, I'm pretty sure you guys aren't going to be float betting hands like King, Queen, King, Jack, right?
But it's very interesting that it uses again this 1/4 sizing.
Yeah.
25%.
I think it's also because I didn't include a larger one. Oh no, I did include 75. I mean, I included 75, but it's not showing for some reason, so I don't know. Maybe it's like a bug. Maybe I should use simple post flop. I don't know. But the standard sizing should be half pot here actually, which I don't have. Yeah. Okay. But the best sizing would be half pot here. But basically, you should be using half pot here, and you should be betting a very wide range. And as we see, you should be betting these strong draws that a lot of people aren't doing. Like you should be betting king, queen, king, jack, queen, jack, and I think a lot of people are doing the other stuff, right? They're gonna bluff their weak flush draws and stuff. Like that's pretty common. They might bluff some of the yeah, most of the weak flush draws will generally be bluffing from what I think of the population, but I think they don't bluff these king, jack, queen, jack type of hands nearly enough. And the reason we can be bluffing these is just because, like, we don't really have to fear a check raise, actually. Like, he's just not going to check raise nearly enough if he's checking to us. Like, especially in person, do you ever see someone, like, just going for the check raise on like a blank 2? I don't really see that very much. Usually, if they have value here, they're just gonna jam, right? Like they're not gonna go and check like 6, 7 of spades here and then go for the check raise. From what I know of the population, but I mean, even if they do, check raise, like because then it's still a great option to be betting with like king, queen, jack type of hands. And as we see, these are the type of hands which really hate to get check raised. They're the type of hands where like, if they check raise, we have a very tough time and we actually have to end up folding, as we see. So a lot of people think that because they have to fold against the check raise, these are some of the best hands to be checking back, when in fact, like, you're pretty happy to just get all your fold equity, and you're gonna like fold out, like, you're gonna fold out some random ace-x that decided to bet the flop. So it's actually a very profitable spot to just be check raising. I mean, to be float betting. You might also fold out. It doesn't look like we're folding too many pairs. But yeah, that's another spot where people kind of misplay, I think. Okay, cool. So that's good. Let's do one last thing. So I want to talk about the difference in barreling strategy on the turn. Okay, so let's bring 3 different flops up. So let me write it down. Okay, so let's do three of hearts and queen of hearts and ace of hearts. All right, what do you think is the barreling frequency and the barreling size that GTA would use? So what did I even employ? Like, okay, maybe this one has more sizings. Okay, good. This one has more sizings. So after a large bet on the flop, and on these cards, we've got 50%, 75%, 25% bet sizings. What sizing will be used on each of these turns, and what frequency do you think? Okay, you can guess.
So on ace X and 3x, I would bet 75%. 3x.
Oh, also, all in is an option, by the way.
So all in on the ace X.
Okay. All right. So all in ace, all in, and frequency. How often? You can also use mixed sizings, right?
Mm-hmm. I would check most often on queen X, but I don't know the frequencies.
Okay, but can you can you take a guess, man? Like, it doesn't help if you don't know when you're in game, right? Like, we're trying to improve your intuition.
On queen X, I would bet like 30%.
So frequency?
30.
Frequency, right?
Yes.
And size?
50.
Mm-hmm. 50%, 30% frequency. Okay, not mixing. Okay, here you're going all in, but no frequency. All right, fuck.
100%.
Are you serious?
No.
Okay. And 3?
But I would love to.
3 of hearts. It's a blank. %. Wow, you guys aren't betting very much. Okay. All right, it's kind of totally different. All right, so let's. Firstly, you're right about one thing. 100% was correct. It's just the sizing.
Wow.
It's like mixed. We can normalize the squares to see it, but okay. I mean, these green ones aren't even really like the full green ones don't really count, right? In general. But yeah, on an ace, it's a card that hits you so hard, right? And then like he's going to be folding a good portion of his aces, whereas you are meant to be betting like even large with a good portion of your aces. It's going to be the same here. Like you're gonna again go. You're gonna have 100% betting, even like uh, over here where you only have a half pot sizing and nothing else to choose from. So yeah. Oh, and so you're right about betting 100% on the ace. The thing is, obviously, you can use mixed sizings. Some hands want to go all in, so hands such as a 10 want to be going all in. Hands like aces actually don't need so much protection over here, and so you can actually just bet like half pot here. That works really good here. And then with bluffs, it's going to kind of be mixing up. But this like hands such as like king, queen, queen, jack a lot of like flush draws are going to have so much equity that you can just jam with them. Although, yeah, there's some really weak flush draws, or like 8-6, for example, is a gut shot, which is so weak that it can like bet half pot and fold actually. And it was never using a large sizing with two pairs. It was always checking or betting small with them, so we don't have any. So your strongest hands basically become ace-x, or like hands such as, you know, ace-10, ace-9, ace-5, and those are always going to be betting small. Same with kings and queens. Those are basically like our strongest hands, which we use to balance with some of these like weak gut shots. Okay. 1 second. Okay, so what was the other board? The 2 is pretty interesting, or the 3, because over here the only sizing we're using is going to be pretty much all in. It's going to be the same here. Like pretty much all in is the sizing on the 2, because or the 3, whatever, same thing. It's basically a very blank card that doesn't change the board at all, and so we were betting a pretty polarized range on the flop, and so we want to like get as much value as we can with a 10. It's not a card that was particularly like hitting our range, unlike the ace. So over here, we're still betting more than 30%. We're betting like 50, 52%, 53, as we see. So yeah, we're still going to be betting quite often. And basically, you've got all your 10s and better, which can be going all in. Maybe like you could consider checking pocket aces and pocket kings sometimes to like balance and not make your range super weak. Because like if you're always just jamming, then your value range is so damn strong. And as we saw earlier, like he's supposed to be float betting a shit ton, and a lot of people, well, some people do actually float a shit ton on the turn, and so it can be a good idea to like put all of these queens plus into a check or something maybe. And I mean, you can give up with a lot of mediocre ace-x if you decide to barrel, but even a hand like ace-4, ace-2, it's now got a gut shot, and these kind of make decent candidates to be barreling. And again, you can highly consider check calling on a lot of rivers, even with ace-high. Okay, so that was the turn, and finally the queen is pretty interesting. So the queen, we're betting like 150. I wonder if we even bet smaller here. Yeah, we even bet like quarter pot if given the option here. So with pretty much our entire range, and like if we have, for example, a 10, like a lot of people they start just checking everything on the fucking a queen, right? Because they're like, oh, the queen's so bad for a range. It like hits him so hard, kind of like. A lot of people start, like you guys said, you'd bet 30% frequency on the queen in general, and as we see, GTO is betting like 60, 70%. Even like over here, it's betting even more, like pretty much 85%. So now we have to think why that is. It's because it's betting a very, very merged range, as we see. And like the queen is also a card that's in our range, firstly, but also like tons of hands, such as a 10 on our side, or like a 9, do not want to give big blind in position a free river and just allow him. Or like, we don't want to be, for example, checking. I don't know. Is there any hand that doesn't want to be checking here? I mean, most cards in general don't want to be checking. Like, tens are the main ones that don't want to be checking, actually. Even hands such as 8-6 are one of the best bluffs in our range in this situation. But yeah, tens really get a lot of benefit from betting, actually, small in this situation, because the queen, it's I mean, it's in his range, yeah, but it's also in our range, but because it's an overcard which hits, which brings a draw, we want to be betting more merged, basically. And since we're betting more merged and we're not betting big, we can now bet very small with a much wider part of our range. That makes sense? Like, lots of people don't do this, but it's really good. Okay, so what do you think? Hello?
Yeah, we hear. Counterintuitive to me, but a lot of this queen. I've never done this like that, but might make sense.
I think it's like really good here. But yeah, it's kind of important to learn how to play different turns, obviously. And like I think those 3 turns brought some pretty good examples. I mean, 10 is kind of interesting because again, you're gonna like kind of use merged range to bet, and obviously you can check more because you're gonna stop bluffing a lot on the 10. But yeah, I think that was good, guys. It's been almost 90 minutes, so we can end here.
Yep.
But yeah, I think today was pretty interesting. I think I'm gonna stop for the rest of the week. I've gone through quite a bit of Sims, but I hope you guys enjoyed this, and you can kind of see what I want to do with this group. Do you like this?
Yeah, I
Yes.
like it. I like it. But I will place some notes from the coachings, just as the final conclusions from all. Do you think we should create some spreadsheet, or I can just type it down the Discord? Because it will be just cool to take a glance, like 1 minute to remember to recall yourself the main assumptions that we made.
Yeah. I mean, I don't take too many notes, but
Okay, I will make it and you will see it, and then you will
okay.
decide.
I could make a spreadsheet for the videos just to file the videos together.